Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from the New York Post. This is dated June 26th, and it's called "The Democrats Hate Democracy Unless They Get Their Way," but we kind of knew that already, didn't we? So let's go ahead and get into this. It says, "The Democratic Party is a case study in untenable contradictions. Its collective reaction to the Supreme Court's recent ruling in United States versus Scrimetti, which confirmed a state's right to ban transgender treatments for kids, exemplified the party's self-righteous brand of incoherence. In 2023, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed the Texas legislature's Bill 1, forbidding medical practitioners in the volunteer state from using puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or surgical interventions to treat minors suffering from gender dysphoria into law, as it was a popular common-sense measure that the state lawmakers passed overwhelmingly. The vote was 26-6 in Tennessee's Senate and 77-16 in its House of Representatives." Yeah, I'd say that's pretty overwhelming, if anything. It says that it was right in line with the national polling on the topic. It says one national poll found that 68% of Americans oppose the use of puberty blockers in children until aged 14, and a 2024 survey suggested that 59% of the country, including 36% of Democrats, support a blanket ban, like Tennessee's, on all gender treatments for minors. But that didn't stop the left from going to great lengths to try to keep Tennessee and 26 other states from protecting their youngest and most vulnerable residents, as the attempt to do so was equal parts farcical and sinister. The Biden administration and the American Civil Liberties Union, or the ACLU, just in case you didn't catch that, argue that these mostly uncontroversial bills constitute a violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. And if there's any lawyers out there, because I am not one, I want one of them to explain to me why that they would consider that a violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Because, again, I don't know, but I'd like to hear about that. Does any part of the U.S. Constitution forbid the American people from using the democratic process to legislate out of existence experimental, medically unnecessary treatments on children? It was obviously not, as the Supreme Court recognized last week. Yet the reaction to its acknowledgement has been predictably over the top. And part of the reason I wanted to do this article, even though this is an issue I think this might actually be like maybe my first or even at most second video on the particular topic here. I don't talk about this because, frankly, I'm kind of one of those people, like, I agree with what they're saying here, but I'm like, if you're 18 or over, do whatever the hell you want kind of attitude. But I do agree with this decision. But the reason for doing the article is mainly because, as the heading said, Democrats hate democracy unless they get their way. Because remember, like, whenever something, goes against what they wanted, and I'm doing this on the heels of the court's decisions to the Supreme Court's decisions to tell the lower courts to, like, knock it off. Trump's allowed to do the things that he wanted to do, which I thought is what this article would be. So I didn't actually read this article beforehand, but they, they're always like, if the courts had, the Supreme Court had done what they wanted, they'd be like, oh, what the Democrats wanted, that is, they would be like, oh, this is how democracy works and everything. But it's like when they uphold things that are kind of obvious, the Democrats are like, no, this is the worst thing in the history of the world. The Supreme Court is being run by conservative justices. Well, I mean, they're not supposed to be conservative. They're supposed to be justices. Okay, and I'm sorry that, like, they're making rulings based on, the way the law should be interpreted instead of just feelings. But let's keep going here. So looks like we're starting with a quote from Spartacus himself, Cory Booker. It says, "Today, the Supreme Court chose to cast transgender children in the shadows," bellowed New Jersey Senator and self-styled Spartacus Cory Booker. "As trans kids suffer when they don't get medically necessary care." That's a bad way of putting it, but she's doing that for a reason. So this is a brazen political decision by the Supreme Court, insisted of Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Aren't all the decisions that they make political? I mean, isn't that kind of the whole thing? It says, "This is about health care. It's not health care," asserted Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin. He's one of my senators, unfortunately, who accused politicians and judges of stepping into the doctor's office and usurping the decision-making that should be left to families and doctors. But again, Mr. Durbin, Senator Durbin, most people feel that children should not be needlessly mutilated. Okay, like, if your kid said that they didn't want to have their right arm, would you try to go around finding a doctor to be like, yeah, let's go ahead and lop off that arm? And, like, we'd all be rightfully saying, like, that's a bunch of BS. You shouldn't be doing that. But, when it comes to their genitals, I guess it's okay. It says all this from the Democracy Dies in Darkness party, the same one that warned us President Donald Trump's reelection would mean the end of self-government itself. It says apparently Democrats' faith in the wisdom of the people can be shattered by a democratic outcome they don't like. Yeah, it's the way it's always been, or at least for a few years at this point. Let's go back up here because of the top. There we go. So this wasn't the first time Democrats have revealed themselves to be authoritarian hypocrites. Yeah, they're the ones that always decry like Donald Trump's being authoritarian, even though he's abiding by every ruling that the Supreme Court came down with, or even not even the Supreme Court, but all the lower courts as well, which I don't know a lot of authoritarians that do that. In fact, I'm not aware of a single one that would do that. But then Democrats don't get their way, and it's we need to completely change the process to get what we want. But you're the authoritarian, just remember that. So recall that they fought tooth and nail for decades to defend the preposterous precedent sent by Roe v. Wade, which blocked Americans from deciding for themselves, through their elected representatives, whether and at what point to regulate abortion. Mere moments after the Supreme Court's 2022 Dobbs ruling returned this question to the people where it belonged, then President Joe Biden rushed to the nearest microphone to accuse the justices of casting a dark shadow over a large swath of the land. This anti-democratic panic persists to this very day, though the judiciary is rightly and repeatedly rejecting it. On Thursday, for example, SCOTUS rebuffed a progressive bid to force red states to give taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood via Medicaid, a lawsuit that attempted to overturn an executive order issued by South Carolina's democratically elected Governor Harry McMaster. Just recall also that any and every effort to disempower the sprawling, unelected administrative state is met with ear-piercing, teeth-gnashing hysterics. After the court last year ended the absurdity of Chevron deference, the frankly lawless principle that courts must defer to administrative agencies' interpretation of the law, congressional Democrats threw a fit. Yeah, the Chevron deference thing, even though I couldn't explain what it is besides what it says right here, I remember reading about that and just kind of being like, why were just these unelected bureaucrats making laws? Like, who are these people? Like, that's a problem. And of course it ended, so we're cool there now. So as many Americans are taught in civics classes that Congress passes a law and that's it, asserted Rep. Pramila Jayapal from Washington, and she's one of the worst. Says, but the reality is that any major legislation enacted must also be implemented and enforced by the dedicated, nonpartisan experts at our public agencies. Says by overturning Chevron, the Supreme Court has undermined the regulatory system our country rests on, wailed Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono, also known as the dumbest person in Congress. Says, but of course, how could anyone forget about the Constitution's fourth branch of government, experts at our public agencies? Yeah, and most of these people that chime themselves in as experts are not really experts. But this is like the appeal to authority thing. They say they're experts, so they must be. So surprise, surprise. All the leftist bluster about America's sacred democratic system was a political messaging strategy, a mere marketing ploy, not a true commitment to honoring the will of the people. As Democrats expect the most unpopular radical elements of their agenda to be read into the Constitution as rights, and the left-leaning D.C. bureaucracy to be enshrined as a decidedly undemocratic super-legislature. Says while they preen and posture about their reverence for democracy, their reaction to it in practice betrays a disdain for the American system and for its people too. Well, yeah, we kind of knew that though, and I mean, Democrats have shown themselves, especially with this nut job up here where I'm pointing my mouse. Becoming like the Democratic primary winner in New York City. They've shown themselves to be the party of basically socialism and all the bad stuff that you don't want in your government. And socialism is not good, mind you. So there you go. I was kind of rambling for a lot of this, but anyway, sorry about that. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.